and gentlemen, welcome to the Badger Den. We're going to get into it today, specifically breaking down the autism vax autism link. A lot of people dance around this. I'm sure you guys know about the Joe Rogan podcast. He's brought on a lot of various guests. I have accumulated that knowledge. I am going to disseminate it here along with my own research. This is the best I can do to formulate the causes of autism. I've been baking this one now for a few months. There's been some formulations that have happened recently, just in the last couple of days, that make it seem like this topic is now to broach and the most amount of people will potentially hear this. Number one, you are the guinea pig. And I do mean that literally and figuratively. We are the guinea pigs, not just for this latest round of wonderful vaxes, but vaxes as a whole throughout their iterations. And I want to point out something to some people who are probably watching. I'm not attacking you if you vaxxed your children. We all do the best we can for our children. No matter what political spectrum you're on, I hope we all love our children and we're doing the best we can. That is not an attack on anyone who vaxxed their child. This is just presenting data I have found, allowing people to formulate their own conclusions and say whether or not they believe this to be true using your own cognitive abilities. I am not attacking anyone who has vaxxed their child. And more than anything, even if you have, you did it under the pretense of a lie. So again, everyone's been lied to. So with that, let's look at a subject that the majority of people out there will not touch from the medical community. All right, we all know this chart. This is the kicker. This is the hockey stick moment. This is the frog boiling in the water. These two right now are outliers. This is the predominant autism rate back in the 70s and 80s. In the 90s, it was somewhere up in here until we began tracking it under the ADDM system. So this is all CDC data. So basically what we're doing is we're grabbing this right here and saying, okay, fine, we're not comparing apples to apples. We want to use the same metric that is measuring autism. So if you use the CDC stick where they're saying, oh, well, we're finding new, better ways to diagnose autism. Well, let's cut this chart out and let's look at just that. That still doesn't look good now, does it? No, it doesn't. To break this down more specifically, back in the 70s and 80s, you can see about how many there are per 1,000. And as you see this number creep up, you've got to ask yourself, what happened between the 80s and 2000s to see a six-fold increase? Do you really think nothing happened there? And let's say nothing did. Then explain this. Explain where we go from 2000 to 6, 7, 8. It's like, fine, okay, that's a rounding error. There's going to be a little bit of variance. To all of a sudden, by 2008, we're seeing a doubling. A doubling in a decade. Doubling of occurrence in a decade. And then we double again in another decade. What is going on? And now we're here where we're at 1 in 31 children have autism. 1 in 31 children. Explain that to me. Make that make sense. In order to really explore this, we have to go back in time for when these vaccines started rolling out, specifically DPT. And with DPT, you're looking at a combination vaccine that was pushed out on the public that did cause issues. And it caused a lot of consternation and pushback on the vaccines. That culminated, however, on Congress, instead of backing up the public, backing up the vaccine industry. NBC, believe it or not, when they actually weren't an entire partisan hack, and yes, they were just doing Mockingbird probably on the side, they actually did a series where they were looking at case studies on damage done by DPT. They were able to look out and see that enough children were being hurt physically by the DPT vaccine, diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, and determined there was something there. And this created a smoking gun to where essentially you started having researchers come out, and they published a book in 1984. And what the book covers is that there was an ongoing validation that vaccines do have issues behind them. And that essentially, potentially in the 1970s and 80s, they were being covered up using the SIDS disclaimer. Not saying that SIDS is exclusively caused by vaccines. By no part am I saying that. What I'm saying is that it's very odd that there was a push for SIDS, or that SIDS was being caused by parents not properly taking care of their children in the crib, which makes no sense to me, but fine, whatever, happened to coincide with a lot of deaths associated with vaccines. Just seems a little odd, don't you think? And that's where we start looking at these case studies and coincidences. What really caught this unaware, or this firestorm, was a case of two twins who received the vaccine and then immediately died. Two twins, so two identical, biological twins, people, both receiving the vaccine, both dying within 24 hours. And then you had that happening, multiple case studies from here on out. That just screams that there's something wrong with the vaccine, right? You get what I'm putting down here? Okay, we're not laying out exact causation yet, but there has to be some sort of relationship. That's what we're building right now. There was a doctor that analyzed over 272 sequential SIDS cases. Again, going back to the link to where they're saying, okay, SIDS, that's you, mommy, daddy. You didn't take care of your child and tuck them in right. That seems very suspect. And so we had a wonderful doctor here who decided to actually look at this. Dr. William Torch analyzed 272 sequential SIDS cases. So he looked at a huge batch of SIDS cases in infants. And what he found was that the deaths were happening immediately or near a vaccine that was provided to the children. Again, showing correlation, potential causation, but correlation. All right? This continued. Cluster of SIDS death in California led to a local newspaper conducting an investigation that revealed a widespread issues with DPT lots. Doctors in the area provided evidence that DPT was then causing the SIDS epidemic there in California. I believe this was in Fresno, and disclosed a 1978 study on the safety of DPT vaccine was buried after researchers discovered adverse reactions within 48 hours of the immunization were 5,000% higher than expected. Wow. The pharmaceutical industry lying about the efficacy and safety of a vaccine. Where have we heard that before? This led to a national vaccine safety legislation being passed in 1986, which was the liability shield. It was supposed to be safety for the actual people. Instead, it was a liability shield for the vaccine manufacturers. Then, of course, the new acellular DTaP vaccine was rolled out, and all of a sudden this gets swept under the rug, or so they thought. 2017 vaccine study, and I remember when this one came out. Peter Abbey, a renowned vaccine scientist and promoter of vaccination, he was a hardcore, you got to get the vaccine is nice, and I'm talking about vaccines in general, not the one that came out in 2020, and was commissioned by the WHO, because again, these guys were buddies. The WHO, those who know the who are the World Health Organization, they love promoting vaccines with Bill Gates. They're little butt buddies, and they love pushing vaccines on third world nations. So they thought they had an out. They're like, okay, Peter, come over here, do this study for us. It's going to be awesome. We're going to show that vaccines are the best. And that's not what he found. So this guy still had a soul. He looked at it, and that's not what he found. Instead, what he found was DPT was associated with a 5-fold higher mortality than being unvaccinated. They held perfectly same children. So this was same to same. Two children, same age, same condition. And they looked at with the vaccine and without, and had a 5 times mortality rate for those who had the vaccine versus unvaccinated. Seems a bit more than corollary, don't you think? Seems almost like causation. Okay? Again, not attacking anyone. Settle down. just pointing out a legit study you can go search on PubMed right now that came out in 2017, specifically citing apples to apples comparison from somebody within the medical community that was pro-vax who said, oopsie, the vaccines look like that might be causing infant mortality. He also cited, this is in his paper, that no study has actually shown beneficial survival effects of DPT. Again, this is one vaccine, not all vaccines. Have to throw that caveat out there, but it does make you wonder now, doesn't it? All currently available evidence suggests that the DPT vaccine may kill more children from other causes than it saves from diphtheria, tinnitus, or pertussis. Although a vaccine protects children against the target disease, it may also increase their susceptibility to unrelated infections. Please note, this is a direct quote from his paper. This is a man who was part of the medical establishment, hired by the WHO, and he's like, this does not look good. What he is pointing out is that if the vaccine doesn't kill the child, it increases the child's mortality for other diseases. It's almost like you're training the body to focus on this one specific disease and ignores these other diseases that could impact the child. Just saying. He's saying it. I'm just interpreting. All right. So the Bill Gates and WHO step in. Needless to say, Gates did not like this. Neither did the WHO. So they lambasted Peter, and they tried to cover up this paper that was published. They delayed it for as long as they could. It did get published, and then they immediately hired this man, Peter Gottschi, to go after Peter. They had to find something wrong. They had to find something to get this paper unpublished. They had to say this is false. You can't smear our DPT vaccine that we're giving these children. We're not causing them to die. We're not increasing their death by 5-fold. That's preposterous. Find the evidence. And what happened was he came out and said that it likely that DPT vaccine increases total mortality in low-income countries. Because again, it was focusing again on the third world, but more than likely you can extrapolate this out, and this impacts all countries that are taking DPT. Specifically between 3 and 5 months of age, children received DPT and OPV early had a 5-fold higher mortality than still unvaccinated children. He confirmed what Peter had found out, that DPT was causing child mortality. Not only that, but this man found out that if you do not give the polio vaccine with DPT, the mortality was even worse with just taking DPT. He didn't cite specifically how much worse, but in the paper, he specifically cites that if you did not give the polio vaccine with DPT, the other symptoms of the polio vaccine actually counteract the symptoms from DPT, and the mortality is actually less being 5-fold, but it would have been worse. Again, not attacking anyone. This is publicly available, published studies that are out there right now for you to go out and Rainbow Hair attack me with. So come on, Rainbow Hair, flip this one for me. Right. So let's look at worldwide. Not that we weren't worldwide with these third world countries where their Gates and the WHO are rolling out these vaccines, but let's look at other things outside of America where DPT was also being studied. Italy had a 2011 study where they were looking at their database specifically on vaccines, and it increased the risk of infant death 2.2 times in the first 14 days that followed. Again, that's just in the first 14 days that followed. They noticed a doubling of death rates for children. Attributed difference between Italy and Germany was due to the age of delivery. So what they looked at is they're saying, hey, Germany's using the same vaccines, but their death rate isn't higher. Germany pushed back when the vaccines were being given to the children and not quite as early. So the death rates weren't nearly as high. Makes you wonder, almost like we're shocking a child's body, like a child, a brand newborn babe, new to this world. Maybe we shouldn't be overloading their systems yet. Maybe we should let them develop a little bit on their own. Just saying. So this triggered a lawsuit in Italy, forcing GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, to release confidential safety data which showed a 90% of reported infant deaths occurred immediately following vaccination. Again, don't shoot the messenger. Just laying it out there for you. Second lawsuit back in 2015, reported the GSK gave to European regulators showed almost a 52% of vaccine-linked deaths occurred within 3 days of vaccination, 82% within 7 days, and 90% within 10 days. It's almost like the vaccine is potentially causing SIDS. Like they're trying to cover up for something. I mean, why would these vaccine manufacturers be covering up for potential deaths in infants? I don't know. And again, the smallest of us had a thought. If you're seeing an issue with children with vaccines potentially causing SIDS, wouldn't that mean you would see more of an issue in premature babes? So I started doing some research on this. Turns out you would. And so I looked at premature infants who received the 2-month vax schedule. So these are premature infants born before 37 weeks of age. So they're definitely underdeveloped when they started receiving their first vaccinations at 2 months. Looked at 2 separate groups, and there was a 25% increase of cardiovascular impact on prematures. This study was repeated 13 times, and 13 times they found approximately anywhere between like a 25 to 50% issues with cardiovascular impacts. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm saying that this caused such a strain on a premature infant, it caused them heart palpitations, heart issues, cardiovascular problems, respiratory issues as well, to where their oxygen levels dipped below 80. Why would you do this to a premature child? So what they found was that 40% of 80 premature infants had a significant adverse effect. 35% was sent as major. So they specifically cited that this 35% of 80 on this one study, these children would have died if they were not in the hospital. Again, make it make sense why we're doing this to children. Dr. Bay Jadaharia, forgive me for killing that name, but he's currently the director of NIH. He was asked point blank specifically about these questions. Is autism being linked to vaccines? Are vaccines as good and safe as they say they are? He would not answer that. He danced around it, and instead he said, you know what, we're looking at holistic things of autism. So they're looking at multiple things. They're looking at the gut biome. They're looking at Tylenol. They're looking at other things that might not directly be associated with the vaccines that could also be causing it as well. So fine, decent argument. It could be a multiple prong approach that are causing autism. It still is puzzling why we don't come out and look at vaccines on a standalone basis to say, are they really as safe as the vaccine manufacturers claim? Maybe if we removed their immunity, they might be a little bit more willing to be upfront about the risks we're putting upon our children. He continued to push that vaccines cannot be the only cause, and he is specifically only looking at the COVID vax regarding its efficacy and danger. Okay, fine, well and good. Couple things to note here. Tylenol, ultrasounds, and gut biome. Gut biome is specifically cited by the NIH director. This, of course, as you know, has to do with refined foods in our diet, has to do with antibiotics, has to do with other approaches that we're putting into our bodies and causing potential autism. There are definitely references to that where you switch a child to a full-on raw diet, you see an improvement. So there's probably something there, or maybe they're just getting better nutrition. Again, corollary, not causation yet. Tylenol. There are published studies right now that show children who are giving Tylenol, specifically in boys, do develop autism. What is happening with Tylenol is in infants, Tylenol is generally metabolized in the brain instead of adults, and larger children in the liver where it's supposed to be metabolized. What do you think's happening when it gets metabolized in the brain? I don't know, maybe inflammation, maybe issues there where it's doing something in the brain it shouldn't be. That is something to be of note. Again, not throwing anybody on the bus, but this is publicly available research, peer-reviewed research that is out there for anybody to look up. If that's one thing I can give to somebody, don't give your infant Tylenol. Switch to Motrin for now. Do something. Get away from Tylenol at least until they get a bit bigger. So what is the cause? Well, you do have studies specifically looking at SIDS. Generally, when a child dies of SIDS, it's just, okay, they died of SIDS, we're going to throw it on there. We've now shown a link that a lot of these SIDS deaths are potentially caused by vaccines. All right. I hope that we've seen some sort of correlation there, and you can say, okay, fine, Mally, I can see what you're saying there. Fine. I will give the devil his due and say, let's say that that's the truth. If that is true, then you would find some link with SIDS deaths. We'll tell you what, a doctor did go out there and did that and did a bunch of autopsies for patients who were parents who did allow their child to be autopsied after SIDS. What they found, in 10% of those SIDS cases, they found microhemorrhages, edema in the spinal column. So specifically, they were able to look at that and say, there is something wrong with this. There is something where this child has had some sort of horrible immune response and died from it. This isn't you set them on their stomach, or you set them on their back, or you set them on their side, and you parent, you're the ones that caused them. No. This is something that got introduced into that child's body and caused a massive immune response and caused horrible internal damage. Again, I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just pointing out the facts. They also found within these, so they found a good 10% saying there's something really crazy here that's happening. In these others, they also found that blood cells began to clump together, creating micro strokes and smaller blood vessels. What does that sound like regarding people who had clotting under the COVID vax? Could it be that it's more than just COVID that's causing these micro strokes due to blood clots in children? Is that what we be doing to these children? All right, so that's my corollary, that's my causation. Let's look at now the smoking gun. If there is some truth to this, Mally, where's your evidence? Okay, I'm glad you asked. Vaccination rates drop among kindergartens as exceptions increase regarding the CDC. After COVID, you had a lot of people who were like, and I want a pure blood baby. And more parents were like, you know what? I'm not giving that experimental gene therapy shot to my child. Good on you, parents who chose to go that route. That took a lot of heart. That took a lot of pressure to go that route. Hats off for all the parents that were able to do that and protect their child. Now, let's just say that also caused, as this is saying, 3.6% of kindergartens received exemptions. So you're seeing a decline in children getting all their vax shots. That means that there must be some sort of evidence of a decline in SIDS. Would you say that that would be plausible? Well, under 18 deaths per week under the age of 18. You're seeing a noticeable downtrend. And again, this is over 18, but this is the best I could get. And this is back in 2020 when people stopped going that. The biggest thing I can say here, this is probably the lockdowns. So, okay, fine. Mouthy, get off your high horse. Find something else. Fine. Sure. What about this? Total U.S. deaths by children's age cohort by week. So this is specifically now looking under 1. Now, explain that one to me. The other ones, they're holding fine, okay? Now we're diving into infants. All of a sudden now you're seeing infant deaths declining. I went and looked this up for 2022 as the latest I could find. Guess what it is now? Down here, if you can see this number, this is 249. It is now down below 200. As more and more parents are opting out and adjusting the vaccine schedule for their children, where they're postponing vaccines for their children, they are saving their children. I'm just saying there's a good chance that this is what is happening. Parents are opting out for the vaccine schedule. They're opting out of vaccines altogether, and you're seeing a decline in infant mortality. Make that one make sense. I got more for you. Looking specifically at Florida. Florida in 2020 versus 2023. Sudden infant death syndrome. Huge drop. Heart disease. Another drop. Wouldn't you say that's a bit significant? I mean, I'm waiting. Explain it to me. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because, again, with Florida, you now have the Florida Attorney General now seeking to end all mandated vaccines. Why is this happening? Again, Bobby Kennedy's going out there and he's going to war with these pharmaceutical giants. Good on Bobby Kennedy. I know he's not going to see this, but love you, man. Don't agree with all your politics, but you've got my vote. And frankly, he is going to probably save he's going to save a lot of Americans if he's allowed to implement MAHA. He's going to save a ton of Americans from obesity, diabetes, and SIDS. Because I frankly don't believe SIDS is what they say it is from what we're seeing. Not only that, Trump has now weighed in. If you have not seen this, he truthed a video back in 2007. This looks older than that. But this video basically showing a preservative that is known to cause cancer and autism that is being put in all the vaccines. Specifically citing that I called here causing things like autism. Trump truthed that out. Okay? So I'm, again, hoping this gets out there and YouTube doesn't ban this completely. I also want to note, please take a look at this chart. This is autism prevalence versus routine infant vaccine doses. Okay? Again, showing a correlation where you've got France, Germany, and UK all the way down here. Again, we noted earlier that Germany had a lower infant mortality rate relative to Italy because they pushed back the number of vaccines at a younger age. And you've got the US all the way up here. Actually, US is a bit higher than this. I don't know why the chart cut off, but the US is actually much higher than this relative to this chart. But you can tell there has to be some sort of trend line that goes between here, maybe. So why is this happening? Well, your doctor is being pushed to give those shots. Your practice is being pushed to give those shots because they make money off of it. From Ron Johnson, some pediatricians can make upwards to $1 million or more a year just on those incentives. This is coming from Ron Johnson's discussion with Brian Hooker, a senior scientist at Children's Health Defense. Blue Cross and Blue Shield's Care Network of Michigan would pay $400 per child who receives a set of 24 or 25 vaccine doses on or before their second birthday. 24 or 25 doses. Makes me sick. This goes on to cite where AAP, again, a supposed network that is supposed to be for our children, goes on to cite within their own board meetings that they are specifically wanting to remove parents' choice. That was one of their primary goals over the past couple of years, is pushing and lobbying Congress to prevent my and your choice to determine what goes into your child, because they knew better than us. Over my dead body. Don't forget, guys, before you say, oh, that's just them, that's not all the medical community. No, they really hate you. This just got dropped from Dr. France Lund. The infectious disease vaccines, so this is all vaccines being given, they don't prevent you from being infected. Ruh-roh. What they prevent is morbidity and mortality, but the next step is to prevent transmission. I'm sorry, I thought we were told the reason we got that is because we wouldn't be able to get like polio or diphtheria or pneumococcal pneumonia. Like, that's the whole point, is that you get that and that creates a shield. But what they're saying is that they've been lying to us this whole time. It's all been a lie. Wow. Feels good, doesn't it? Dr. Mary Bowden, she goes on to cite, this was a famous doctor, famous now, she didn't want to be, who pushed and helped save numerous patients utilizing ivermectin and pointing out that the COVID vax regarding her clinic was not actually helping or saving people. She also goes on to point out that people were being killed in hospitals and could cite evidence on it. She points out a Cleveland Clinic study that showed that flu vaccine doesn't prevent hospitalization or death. And in fact, if you get the flu vaccine, you're 24% more likely to get sick from other respiratory infections. Again, I'm not saying all vaccines are bad, but it does look like there is some smoke and there is some fire that is happening out there that we are being hidden from. Not attacking anyone, just laying out the facts that there are serious issues that we are not being told, we have been lied to regarding vaccinations. Mouthy out.